Dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sustainable Fur Summit, co-hosted by the Hong Kong Fur Federation and the Consulate General of Canada in Hong Kong. First of all, I'd like to express our appreciation to the Consulate General of Canada in Hong Kong for supporting our industry and co-hosting this event with us. In particular, I'd like to thank the Consul General Ms. Rachel Bedlington for joining us today to deliver the opening speech for the event. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome and thank the Honourable Mrs. Regina Ip, the current member of the Executive Council of Hong Kong, to deliver the keynote speech for the event. It's a privilege to have her sharing her ideas with our audience and our industry. Last but not least, I'd like to welcome our panel speakers today. I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on today's topic. It's not very often that we have the opportunity to gather so many people from all sectors of the trade to exchange ideas that are so important to the future development of our industry. Today, we have organized 3 panel discussions with our distinguished guest speakers to explore the crucial role of the fur trade in the sustainable development of people and planet. We'll speak about fur as a sustainable part of human activity and its relationship to nature. More importantly, we'll explore the topic under the scope of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We'll see how fur can be part of this development model and allow human, nature, and animal coexist in harmony. Once again, welcome and thanks for joining this event. May I wish all of you good health and a prosperous new year. Now, I'd like to ask all of you to give a warm welcome to the Consul General of Canada in Hong Kong, Ms. Rachel Bedlington, for her opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. 大家好, 大家好. Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to see so many Hong Kong, mainland China, and international fur trade practitioners attending today's Sustainable Fur Summit. Thank you for your interest in Canada's sustainable fur industry. I would also like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to our event partner, the Hong Kong Fur Federation, for organizing today's summit. As you know, fur trade is part of Canada's resource-based economy and one of Canada's oldest and most historically significant industries. Canadian furs only come from species which are abundant and from within a highly regulated wildlife management system. They include seal and mink furs, which you will hear about from our 5 Canadian speakers today. Seals are a valuable natural resource, and Canada's seal harvest is the most closely watched and strictly regulated animal harvest in the world. It also contributes to marine diversity protection and a balanced ocean ecosystem. Let me mention 3 areas through which Canada's sealing measures up to sustainability requirements. First and foremost, humaneness. Canadian seals are harvested humanely according to a strict 3-step process of stunning, confirmation of unconsciousness, and effective bleeding developed by veterinarians. Canadian sealers are experienced professionals and have been trained in this process to ensure that seals are not skinned alive. Furthermore, the Government of Canada has established a solid legislative and regulatory framework under which the seal hunt is conducted and monitored. Fisheries officers conduct surveillance using aircraft, boats, and inspections on wharves and in the plants. Secondly, Canada's sealing measures up by being sustainable and conservation-minded. The Canadian hunt does not endanger seal populations. Seal populations are carefully monitored, and a management approach is developed based on precautionary principle. This has been highly successful, and the harp seal population has increased dramatically in the last 2 decades, with an estimated 8 million animals. The seal population has also been a major contributor to the lack of recovery of groundfish stocks. The third area I want to highlight is the socioeconomic importance of this industry. Sealing is a significant economic mainstay for thousands of families in Atlantic Canada, Quebec, and the North. For example, sealing represents between 25 and 35% of the sealers' total income, supporting over 5,000 individuals and their families. Seal oil is also an important source of omega-3. Marketed in capsules in Canada, Europe, and Asia, it is helpful in preventing and treating high blood pressure, diabetes, and many other health problems. Globally, Most furs are now produced on farms, and Canadian mink farmers believe in the responsible and sustainable use of animals to meet our intrinsic needs as human beings. For many years, the Government of Canada, mink fur farmers, and many other stakeholders have demonstrated critical leadership in ensuring humane farming practices in Canada. Canada's National Code of Practice for the Care and Handling of Farmed Mink provides mink farmers nationally developed guidelines to ensure that animals are well cared for and harvested humanely. Canadian mink farmers are also subject to on-farm inspection and third-party audits to ensure responsible production practices. The Code also provides a national guide for provincial enforcement officers throughout Canada, acts as a basis for on-farm assessment programs, and may be referenced by the courts in the case of violations. A comprehensive on-farm mink care assessment program was developed in 2018, helping verify that mink farms across the country are consistent with the Code. In addition to animal welfare requirements, the assessment program also addresses overall management, as well as husbandry and environmental practices, including criteria required by the fur market. 400 years following its beginning, Canada's fur trade continues to use a plentiful natural resource in a sustainable and responsible manner, and is an important contributor to Canada's economy and ecology. And events like this present an important opportunity to deepen our network in order to bolster sustainable and responsible fur trades in Canada, Hong Kong, mainland China, and other international markets. I wish the esteemed panel of Canadian and international fur industry experts every success in what I'm sure will be a very productive discussion on sustainable fur trade. Thank you. 多谢大家. 谢谢大家.
Thank you very much, Consul General Ms. Rachel Bedlington, for the opening remarks. Now I would like to welcome the Honorable Mrs. Regina Yip, Member of the Executive Council, to deliver the keynote speech for the event.
Mr. Eric Lau, Chairman of the Hong Kong Fur Federation, Ms. Bedlington, Consul General of Canada, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to have the opportunity to speak at the Sustainable Fur Summit, co-hosted by the Hong Kong Fur Federation and the Consulate General of Canada. I am a long-time admirer of Hong Kong's fur industry, a frequent customer, and a defender of the industry against factually untrue and lopsided allegations of cruelty to animals. Fur garment production has always been one of the hidden jewels of Hong Kong's manufacturing industries. Few people are aware that Hong Kong is the world's third largest exporter of fur clothing and a top exporter of fine fur garments and accessories. Many of our furriers have set up production facilities in mainland China and Southeast Asia. However, fur traders remain active in Hong Kong, specializing in trade-related services such as sales and marketing, quality control, logistic arrangements, and fur garment design. Whilst mostly operating as OEM manufacturers for renowned brands, I'm pleased to note that Hong Kong's fur industry is offering more diversified products, moving away from cold weather utility products to fashionable and casual lightweight designs targeting a sophisticated metropolitan fashion market. In recent years, the industry has adopted sustainable technologies in sewage treatment, dyeing, dressing, etc. to address the environmental concerns of buyers. Being fully aware of the environmental and animal welfare concerns of the industry's critics, I'm glad to note that the fur industry has worked hard to develop the Fur Mark certification programs to ensure that the industry meets the highest standards in sustainability and ESG practices in all stages of production, from trapping of wildlife, farming of fur-bearing animals, dressing and dyeing, manufacturing to sales and marketing. Fur garments are actually rare products that are renewable in the sense that they can be remodeled and restyled and passed on to the next generation. Their production not only provides mankind with protection against the elements in cold weather conditions, but also give all our industry participants full opportunity to express their creative talents. I cannot think of a better partner for Hong Kong to forge ahead in making fur a sustainable industry than Canada. Canada is Hong Kong's key re-export market for fur products. In 2021, Hong Kong's re-export of fur products to Canada accounted for 13% of Hong Kong's total re-export of fur products to the world. Moreover, Canada is well known for its meticulous and advanced wildlife and farm animals management and environmentally friendly practices in fur production. Working together, I am confident that Canada and Hong Kong can help build a bright and sustainable future for the international fur trade. I applaud the organizers for their efforts in hosting this year's virtual Hong Kong International Fur and Fashion Fair, despite difficult circumstances. And I wish the summit great success and a very bright future. Thank you again for having me as your speaker, and all the best. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, according to research, over 95% of us engage with animals on a daily basis. We may drink their milk, eat their meat, eggs, or use them for transportation, such as the way we use horses, camels, donkeys, or use them to work for blind people, the police, or we use animals for entertainment, materials, or companions. The list can go on and on. But natural resources, including animals, are not unlimited. That's why in order to coexist peacefully and prosper, we have to live with nature and animals in a mutually respectful and sustainable manner. And yes, sustainability is the key, and it is our focus for our summit today. There will be 3 panel discussions today, and we are so honored to have such a list of distinguished panelists with us, and they are from all over the world: Canada, China, Finland, Russia, UK. The moderators are all from Hong Kong. The theme of this summit is sustainability, and we are all aware of the 17 colors of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The 3 panel discussions are therefore named Sustainably Green for Panel 1, where the moderator, Johnny Lau, joined by his panelists, will look at humans and animals from a holistic sustainability perspective. The second panel is Sustainably Brown, where our moderator, William Sun, and his panelists will examine land and animals and how they interact with sustainability. While the last panel is Sustainably Blue, and we'll be diving into the blue ocean with our moderator, Anthony Ash, and his panelists to look at how some of these amazing animals under the water interact with humans on sustainability. The moderator of each panel discussion will introduce his panelists. Each panel is 45 minutes long, including Q&A. Please send your questions via chat room or leave your questions in the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy.
For the first panel discussion, I would like to introduce our moderator, Director of the Hong Kong Fur Federation, Mr. Johnny Lau, and our 3 speakers: CEO of Fur Harvester, Mr. Mark Downey, Director of Standards and Sustainability of International Fur Federation, Mr. Paul Stockel, and finally, Deputy Secretary General of China Leather Industry Association, Mr. Jonathan Huang.
Hi everybody, this is Johnny from the Hong Kong Fur Federation. Today we are going to discuss why and how fur is sustainable. Before we go on to this topic, I would like to state that humans and animals have been closely connected for many thousand years in our history. Back in the Stone Age, hunting animals was one of the main sources for humans to obtain their food in order to survive. And of course, the skin of the animal can help humans to keep warm during harsh climate in the nature. Somehow, the skin of the animal can actually provide a certain level of protection for humans. What I want to say here is that humans might have been already extinct many thousand years ago without utilizing animals. Today it's my honor to invite some experts from our fur trade to speak about why and how fur is sustainable. Let me introduce who they are. Firstly, I would like to introduce Mr. Mark Taylor from Canada. He is the Chief Operation Officer of the Fur Harvester Auction, which is the biggest auction house selling wild fur in the world. And Mr. Paul Stocker from UK. He is the Director of Standards and Sustainability from the International Fur Federation. And Mr. Jonathan Huang from China. He is the Deputy Secretary General from the China Leather Industry Association. And he is also the Director of the China Fur Commission. Thank you all for joining this seminar. We really appreciate this. Because of the time difference, I know it may not be easy for some of you guys. Thanks once again. So in this discussion today, first of all, I would like to talk about the wild fur. There are many different types of wild fur being used in the fur trade. The most common species are raccoon, muskrat, otters, coyote, sable, etc. I'm curious to know that why using the wild fur is sustainable and how can it be sustainable. I'm willing to pass this topic to Mark. I'm pretty sure you should be the best in our trade to tell us about this issue. Thank you, Mr. Mark Taylor.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. I think, the answer is evident on the sustainability of wild fur use today, and just by the long history that it's had over the years. It's Canada's oldest land-based industry, trapping and fur trading. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, as we all know, from the time of the first European settlers into North America, who came specifically looking for beaver pelts and things like that to take back to Europe, as we know. I think it's also evident, as you mentioned, auction houses like ours, being able to have multiple sales every year over the last few hundred years speaks to the sustainability of the product and the management of the animals that we take for the industry. There are some up and downs in quantities of fur harvested every year. Some of those factors are due to the seasons, the conditions, the amount of snow, the ice, drought, water levels, and that sort of thing that the trappers have to face. So that kind of affects the harvest from time to time. Some of the other things affecting that might be the price of the fur. So if the prices are low, some of the trappers may not put in the effort to go and catch, as much as they would in previous years. And that also is relevant as to the cost of the trappers catching their goods, the price of gas, equipment that they would have to use to catch that. So that could have some effect as to how much is caught. But as far as the populations of fur bearers are concerned, they fluctuate from year to year, but overall they're more plentiful now than they were 200 or 300 years ago. I believe that's due to the modern management techniques and principles that we use here in North America to harvest and maintain good population levels of those animals. Trappers adhere to strict government regulations and rules set by the government to ensure that those population levels are maintained. They do that through the use of trapping seasons. The lengths of the season are set so that the animals are caught during their most prime periods. So we're not taking animals that are of no value as well, or that we're not taking animals during the breeding season. So we're ensuring the future generations are still there, for the next season. Some of the other things that they do to, keep this sustainable or set limits or quotas. Different jurisdictions have different rules as to how they set their limits or their quotas or the regulations. In Ontario here, where North Bay Fur Harvesters is, we have quotas set to prevent the overharvest of many species such as beavers, sable, lynx, otter, fisher, and sable. These animals are susceptible to overharvest. They're easily caught and they don't have huge reproduction rates. So we have to make sure that we maintain a certain level of those and we don't overharvest them. The other things trapping benefits, as far as sustaining the populations, is reducing overpopulation. So we don't really think of that too much, but animals such as beavers cause wide habitat destruction, which would eliminate habitat for other species. As well, if the populations get too high, we end up with starvation, disease, and ultimately a dramatic reduction in animal numbers if the populations get too high. So trapping helps to maintain a good balance in the ecosystem. And that maintains good harvest levels that we can achieve from year to year, so that there's plenty of fur to go around for the fur industry from one year to the next. We've also learned as trappers to avoid the mistakes of over harvesting. Hundreds of years ago, when the first European settlers came, they over harvested the beavers almost to the point of extinction. They soon realized that that was not sustainable to, their goals as furriers. So, they put in place rules and regulations again to help those populations survive. Trappers are really good at self-regulating. If they go on their line and find that animals are not as plentiful as they once were or the season before, they can reduce the amount of trapping pressure they put on those animals in order to help give them a boost for the next year. Trappers are the eyes of the outdoors community here in North America. They're on the land constantly, so they're helping the wildlife managers set the quotas and the seasons based upon what they see out on the landscape there. So, the sustainability of fur is also evident in the longevity of the fur garments that are produced. They're lower impact on the environment compared to petroleum-based products. And fur is more biodegradable than synthetic products, as we know, and can be recycled and repurposed for many years to come. They can be made into different style of jackets. Grandma's old fur coat can be turned into a more modern hip style, or it can be turned into blankets, pillows, teddy bears, whatever you might want in that case. So I think the sustainability of the fur as a natural renewable resource is resounding more now with a new generation of consumers looking for an alternative, more carbon neutral product that have not only better for the environment, but fashionable and warm for today's standards. So.
Thank you very much, Mark. We
Yep,
will still have
thank
some
you.
questions from our audience later on. So please stay here for a little while, okay?
Yep, no problem. Thank you, Johnny.
Next, I'm going to have Mr. Paul Stockwell from the International Fur Federation. He is going to tell us how important is the fur trade to meeting the demands of the world's growing population and the climate change, as well as the related topics, which is carbon neutrality and biodiversity. And Paul will also talk about the fur mark being used in the fur trade, why and how the fur mark is related to our today's topic. Thank you, Mr. Paul Stockwell.
Good morning, and thank you, Johnny, for that introduction. So, yes, my name's Paul Stockwell. I was formerly Director of Standards and Sustainability at the International Fur Federation. My role very much at the moment is on delivering FurMark, which I'll come on to later. But in my role as Standards and Sustainability Director, I was tasked with bringing in the sector's first ever sustainability strategy. And that was really quite a challenge, an ambitious challenge, given that we have such a diverse sector globally and covering the whole supply chain. We engaged expert consultants to speak with internal, external stakeholders in development of a strategy, which looked at effectively identifying 3 key pillars for how we move forward as a trade. 1 around animal welfare, 2 on the environment, and 3 on the people within our sector. And that strategy incorporates a range of commitments over 10 years, which are aligned with, for example, the UN's SDGs, Sustainability Development Goals. And that strategy is really very much with us. We use it all the time. And my colleague Adam Gono in Brussels, in Belgium, he very much leads on that work as we move forward. And I think it's important to say that in terms of the role of the trade as we move forward, the context, well, you may have seen the Intergovernmental Report on Climate Change that was published yesterday. Again, the emphasis is on a real need to act. Many parts of the world are already in a very dire situation when it comes to the impact of the climate. And we know from our own experience as a trade, within fashion, it is unfortunately one of the world's biggest polluting sectors. There is as we touched on in your introduction, a growing population, growing demand for fashion, and how we respond to that. And you only have to look at the trend data to see that production levels will increase over the next 10, 15 years, which is only going to impact further on the environment. And therefore, what role does the fur trade play in addressing these real challenges? I think consumers are understandably more aware of the impact of the environment. They can see with their own eyes what's happening maybe locally via the news media as well. Obviously, going back to yesterday's report. And therefore, the fur trade has a real role to play here. We are relatively small when you compare us to something like the leather sector, but our reach is global. We lead in many areas, and we are able to effectively show what we have done in delivering on sustainability. And obviously, clearly, the positive environmental impacts that we have. If I sort of start, I suppose, with the production side. So if you look at something like wild fur, as Mark touched on very clearly in the case of North America, there are a clear system of rules and regulations for the harvesting of wild fur. Those conservation programs, managing in many cases abundant species, and we also have in those cases co-usage of those products where again it's not just harvested for the fur, they may be consumed as well, particularly in certain parts of the world. If you're taking farm fur, then again there are clear system of rules and regulations covering production, as well as all the byproducts that you would get from production of farm fur, such as oils, fertilizer, manure, etc. These are all used, again, going back into the economy, as it were. And I think if you move through the supply chain, the processing, tannery level use of controlled chemicals, the regulation of the dressing processes, from whether it's in China, Hong Kong, Europe, North America, is very clear. And that's why many of those in the production on the dressing side have come forward to participate in the Furmox system, which again I'll come on to. And when you look at the manufacturing phase, the manufacturers are working with a natural luxury material, and therefore emphasis has always been on the full use of that material, so very little waste. That's why, for example, if you're using a pelt of any particular fur type, even down to the pieces, the little offcuts that you would see, they are still used in production because they have a value, a quality, and skilled artisans will be using those materials to make maybe accessories or even garments from them. So there's always been an emphasis within the trade on little waste, minimizing waste and maximizing the value. So I suppose the broader benefits of fur, which is, again, this really the life cycle aspect, is longevity. We know that fur has a long life in terms of its usage. It is a natural material. It can be recycled. It can be reused. It is done extensively globally, and that's evident by the number of manufacturers and businesses that offer those sorts of services to customers who wish to have their furs restyled or reused in some way. And that's why fur also fits very comfortably within the circular economy. And we're seeing that now in fashion, a much bigger emphasis on moving from a linear economy to a circular one. And again, fur has a very key role here, especially when you look at, as I say, the impacts of fast fashion and the damages that it causes. I think when you're talking about how you measure the impact of the trade and as we move forward, that's also really an interesting challenge. There is an increasing, should we say, political emphasis for carbon impact, whether it's in New York or the European Union, and how to measure that impact. So the IFF have been working extensively with consultants who are experts in this field to take all the different inputs, as it were, from production of both farm and wild, to explore our carbon impact, and therefore look at ways from those results, from that data, to see how we can target those areas where we might be perceived weaknesses and where we can improve. And we've been very clear in setting that work out and moving that forward. So again, this is important in terms of how we understand where our challenges are within trade, and then again how we can mitigate. And I think just on this, the point about biodiversity, I think there is a loss of biodiversity due to sort of increased human population, increased consumption. But I think, as Mark touched on, by understanding those threats, we have taken action. Certainly, when you look at wild fur, for example, in North America, where there are very clear rules, regulations to manage harvest levels, and this is all, as I say, properly defined and there for the sort of public, as it were, to see and observe, particularly in anything from license issuance to quota seasons, everything else. Farming as well it plays such an important role in areas where maybe farming is not necessarily possible. Other forms of farming, it's very important in terms of employment, for knowledge, expertise, experience, and creating that infrastructure. And I think that's really, really important that we have these reflect on the common complexities of fur production, and again where it's located in different parts of the world. But it's also important that we check that the systems of rules and regulations that are in place, both for farm and wild, are observed, are functioning, working correctly, and where possible improved. And that comes on to, I suppose, my last point, which is around FERMARK. And FERMARK is a global certification and traceability system. It was, in effect, put into place to deliver clarity and assurance to consumers, regulators, those in the trade who maybe didn't necessarily have a full understanding of the sector. FERMARK covers farm fur, wild fur, the dressing process and manufacturing. And it also does this through ensuring through a traceability system, which then tracks the movement of those furs from certified farms or from the wild through the auction process, through the dressing, through manufacturing. And by capturing it in a traceability system, we're also able then to produce labels, which again reflect the data that sits behind it. And FERMARK's been in operation now since 2021. There are more than 150 companies globally inside the system. And the commitments, and this is the point, come back to sustainability, are beyond welfare, animal welfare. That is obviously a clear commitment for the sector. But we also are very focused on the environmental aspects as well, which is why within the dressing stage, the dressing and dyeing stage, we have a chemical standard, which covers more than 20 companies globally, which have gone through that process, working again with independent experts to design and deliver that standard, which is again reviewed and explored in order that it functions at the right levels. And I think that circles back to the sustainability strategy, where there are commitments to look further within FERMARK at environmental and social standards. And we're already undertaking that process now, benchmarking the supply chain within FERMARK. But we also have to be cognizant of the challenges that have been impacting the trade, and not just our trade, but because of COVID. It's been such an exceptional couple of years, I think, globally, in terms of how trade has been able to function. So introducing new standards, new requirements have to be correctly timed to ensure that they have the right impact and ensure that we bring everyone with us. So we'll be looking at that. We are looking at that work now. And that all has to be aligned with external NGOs and other organizations as well, so that we're working in harmony. So just to really finish this point, that the fur trade is important in meeting global challenges. But we know as a trade, we also must work better and smarter in communicating many of the sector's inherent sustainability credentials, and also meeting our commitments to ambitious sustainability goals. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Now we found that the fur trade actually brings a lot of benefit to the nature ecosystem. I think it's necessary to deliver this positive message to the public, and that more people to realize it. Please also stay here for a little while, as we might still have some Q&A time at the end of this section. And now I'm going to invite Mr. Jonathan Huang from the China Fur Commission. He's going to tell us how important people can help to make their fur trade more sustainable, especially for minorities like women and Aboriginal. Please go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you, Johnny.
Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to join this seminar and share some view about the sustainability of fur industry. And fur industry in China mainland has provided a very big employment opportunity for over 5 billion people, and has contributed to the elimination of poverty, hunger, health, and well-being. And talking about the minority, women and Aboriginal, actually it is not a minority for, women and Aboriginal for fur industry is not minorities, because I can say, for example, in fur farming industry sectors, majority of the workers on the farms are middle-aged women, because women are more patient and meticulous. These women are often usually the local people. They are employed by the farm to stay in their hometown for employment. The salary they get can support their families. At the same time, they do not need to leave their hometown and can accompany their husbands, children, and the elderly. And usually they get paid much higher than the agriculture work. And for the fur processing industry, more than half of the employees are women. They come from all over the country. They are young, energetic, dexterous, and fast in learning technology. For example, they cutting, sewing, patterning, everything. They even better than men. For example, the first place in our national craft skill competition is a girl in her 20s. Women receive equal pay for equal work and enjoying the same rights as a man, and even perform better than men in this job. In the sales sectors, we can say overwhelming majority of the employees are women. 90% of the shopping guys are also young women. Therefore, both women and Aborigines play a very important roles in all value chains of fur industry in China, I can say. At the same time, the fur industry has become a very good stage to provide them with a good source of living income and realize their life value. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thanks for sharing your thoughts regarding how people to help the fur trade more sustainable. Appreciate that. Well, now I have a few questions from our online audience. First question we have is that, what will happen to the nature of Canada if people stop trapping wild animals? Is the low price in wild fur beginning to cause people to stop trapping? I think Mr. Mark Taylor can help us to answer this question. Thanks, Mark. Can you turn on the mic? Yeah, microphone. Yeah.
Sure, Johnny. Thanks. Yeah, I think the low prices definitely have some effect as to the amount of trapping that we're seeing happen here in Canada and across North America. The effect that might have on the natural populations, as I mentioned, overpopulation can play a big role in ultimately lowering the population levels of certain species. So I think it restores a natural balance of ebbs and flows as far as natural cycles, but as far as maintaining a good balance of animals on the landscape, I think we're gonna, we need trapping to keep going in that sense. I don't think it's, price is definitely, we've witnessed with the reduction of trappers sending furs to us, and the amount of furs is definitely being witnessed in the last few years overall. So
Thanks, Mark. Another question from our audience is that, given that fur is a sustainable product and have very small carbon footprint, do you foresee it will help you in promoting fur's product to the fashion industry? Is there enough work that has put in by IFF to push this point? Can I have Mr. Paul Stocker to say something about this? Paul?
It broke up slightly there. Do you mind repeating the question?
Sorry. My question is that fur is a sustainable product and have very small carbon footprint. Do you foresee it will help you in promoting fur products to the fashion industry? Is there enough work that has put in by the IFF to push these points?
It's a good challenge, yes.
Yes.
I think it's clear when you're talking about. I mean, it depends how you measure sustainability. There are so many different markers, whether it's sort of environmental, social, and ethical. I think the challenge for the industry is that social media has been very unkind in misrepresenting the trade. I think when you actually engage consumers, and that's really important. I think evidence is really important, and we've done this as IFF. I've sat in focus groups in Hong Kong, talking to young people about sustainability, what it means to them, how they view the fur trade. And what's clear from consumers, whether it's in Hong Kong, New York, London, wherever we've done research, that consumers care about sustainability, but what they want are clear, concise messages. And when you talk about fur, they understand it, they get it, they recognize the value, and actually they support it. The fur is popular, and you can see that with the way people choose to buy it, wear it. But they also need information, and they need clarity and evidence. And I think that's where the industry should and could do more. We are, as I say, a relatively small sector. I think Furmark, as I touched on earlier, goes a long way in delivering that because it's a simple, clear message, and also it's backed by independent elements all along the supply chain, so we can effectively verify whether it's the animal welfare certification or the dressing process, and that's really important because consumers want that and they're responding to it as well. So there is more we can do, but I believe Furmark is a very important step forward in demonstrating our commitment to sustainability. But there's, as I said, there's always more we can be doing to promote it as well.
Thank you, Paul. And now I have a question to you, Jonathan. The Chinese government has been very supportive of the farming industry. Is fur farming also being supported by the Chinese government?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
Oh, let me repeat the question again. The Chinese government has been very supportive of the farming industry. Is our fur farming also being supported by the Chinese government?
Okay, thank you. Last year, actually, the central government already put the fur farming industry into the husbandry industry instead of the wildlife industry in the past. So actually, this is the fur farming industry is regarded as the normal husbandry industry ever since. So that is to say, the central government will support even more on fur farming industry in the future.
Thank you, Jonathan. Now, I have the last question from our audience. Mark, when it comes to sustainability, another keyword is biodiversity. Also, wild fur sometimes linked with the use of the endangered species. Is there any conflict in the use of the wild fur? Mark?
The use of wild fur, endangered species, yes. Obviously, we know about the CITES agreement that there is no trade in the endangered species, any endangered species. So as far as sustainability and the furs that we use, none of those are affected by, what we use as fur for our industry today.
Understand that. Thank you, Mark. So I would like to appreciate everybody once again for joining this seminar today. I think it's about time for me to pass this to my colleague for the next section. Thank you, Mr. Williamson. So may I have all the audience to stay tuned, as our next session will start shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the second panel discussion, I would like to introduce our moderator, Director of the Hong Kong Fur Federation, Mr. William Sun, and our three speakers, Director of Canadian Mink Breeders Association, Mr. Matthew Moses, CEO of IFF Eurasia Region, Mr. Maxime Chipernoy, and finally, General Manager of Saga Furs, North America Region, Mr. Charlie Ross.
So good morning, everyone. My name is William Sun, and I'm very happy to be the host of this session. So in this session, we are going to talk about how fur production and the economic development, and in particular relating to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to introduce my panelists before I start. Today we have Maxime Chipernoy. Sorry. We have Maxime Chipernoy from the IFF Eurasia region. And then we also have Charlie Ross from Saga Furs. So without further ado, I would like to kickstart with the program. First question is, how do fur farming contributes to sustainable production and consumption? Please go ahead, Charlie.
All right, I think fur farming is one of the leaders in sustainable animal use production. We serve as a model for other animal use groups like the leather industry. Fur farming comes from a certified farms under our Fur Mark headline. The farmers have accepted and produced sustainable production not only because of the legal requirements in the state and the governments, but also because it makes economic sense. So there's really something to be proud about in fur production, that fur farmers have been sustainable, even before we put rules and regulations on certification. It just makes sense to be able to participate in circular economy, and fur farms have been leaders in that. Even before we knew that we were calling a circular economy, nothing from a fur farm goes to waste. There's no negative effect on the environment, and almost zero is going into landfill. So we have really taken a leadership role in this. As well, being part of rural communities and agriculture, we follow the same strategic philosophies of all our brethren raising other animals like cattle and pig and birds. It makes sense from an animal welfare standpoint. It makes sense from an economic standpoint, and certainly sustainable ways of doing agriculture and fur farming has been something that our industry has practiced for many years.
So thank you very much, Charlie, for your explanation. May I now invite Maxime to contribute a little bit about how fur farming would contribute to sustainable production and consumption in Russia. Thank you. You unmute, Maxime.
Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you, William. Good morning, dear attendees. Good morning, Charlie. Thank you very much to the Hong Kong Fur Federation for the invitation and organizing such wonderful event. So regarding your question, the fur farming industry is one of the most regulated industries today. The existing animal welfare standards currently used in farms, for example, in Russia and around the world, far exceed the requirements and recommendations established by the European Union. In Russia, fur farming is a fully transparent activity, and its traceability is ensured by the unified state veterinary system called Mercury, which traces the product from the farm to the place of sale. And speaking of the sustainability, production, and consumption, we can say that, and I fully agree with Charlie, that the fur farming fully meets its requirement. As in fact, it is embedded in the circular economy, because the offals from the meat and fish industries are used in the preparation of fodder, and fur farming waste is used as the fertilizer. So there is a completely zero waste, almost zero waste from the farms. Animal products, skins, are natural and biodegradable material. And most importantly, that the fur farming is the renewable resource that also helps to preserve the wild species of fur-bearing animals from over-harvesting. And also being a part of the global fur mark system, fur farms ensure the sustainability, high welfare standards, and transparency. And of course, nowadays fur farming is developing. It's not so conservative because there are many innovations that has been introduced for the last 20 years, because the feed supply and preparation of feed is improving, the access to to the feed, to water, and the keeping the rules of keeping and the guidelines, they also improving. So the fur farm is not standing and not like frozen in time, and of course it goes with the modern time. And there are a lot of prospects in the further development of the fur farming, because there are many technologies for processing fur farming waste into biofuels. For example, use of roofs of farming sheds as the solar energy source, and much more, which of course fits into the concept of sustainable development and green energy.
So thank you very much, Maxime, for your sharing. I think it's clear to see that the fur farming is sustainable. So I would like to get another question to Maxime. I understand the Russia is one of the most important places for wild sable production. So I want you to explain how does the wild fur production, how are they interlinked with the human lifestyles in the regions, and how do you balance amongst economic development, animal welfare, and social inclusion in those Russian regions? Thank you.
Well, just regarding this question, well, today we need to understand a simple and obvious fact regarding the fur farming and also wild fur trapping, that all animals that are kept in farms and which are captured from the wild, we do so just to meet the human needs. And this bond with humans, the connection that has existed for centuries. And the farming and wild fur trapping, it complements the human comfort. And to find the right balance, people must give the animals feedback, which can be the high standards of animal welfare, the best practices of wildlife management, which in turn play an important role in life of animals and as well as life of the human beings who consume the end product. Today's situation, it demonstrates an optimal balance between humans, fur farming, wild fur trapping, consumption and social integration, because fur breeding and wild fur harvesting have a strict government control, high animal welfare standards. It is guided by the best natural resource management practices. It's fully traceable. It has a fully traceable supply chain, and to maintain a sustainable ecosystem, wildlife management is very important. For example, if we're talking about the sables in Russia, if we allow sable to overpopulate, it will be as a predator, have a negative impact on other species, because it will just eat other animals. So there will be not very good balance. So human beings must treat nature with care, and the red lines here must be avoided. Regarding social integration, I think that it is very important, because our industry supports the traditional lifestyles of the indigenous people, for whom harvesting of wild furs is very important, or sometimes even the main source of income. And of course, it helps to keep their traditions going, not only in Russia, but I think, of course, obviously in Canada too.
Yes, thank you very much, Maxime. So I would like to also understand from Charlie's point of view, how does fur farm in countries such as Finland or in Eastern European countries, how are they interlinked with the human lifestyles there? And how do you balance economic development, animal welfare, and social inclusion in those regions?
Well, I think we've been fur farming in those regions for over 100 years. So it's part of the nature of the community there. Um, it's not only about the animals that are sold and the money that is generated at the auctions, but by selling and raising fur animals, we're protecting and contributing to local communities. So it's very important to understand that in a farming community, the fur industry is paying for the taxes, paying for the roads, paying for the schools, paying for the education of the next generation. So it's totally integrated into the community. And I think that has allowed us to grow and expand and actually contribute to the social integration of fur farming into the world here today. We're fur farming in 20 countries around the world. We have developed global standards under fur mark to bring it all under under a central theme, but it's the local communities, as Maxime said, the indigenous populations that we support, that this industry has really taken a leadership role. If we talk about Finland or colder regions up north, there are no other agricultural jobs for these people. I mean, they can't grow crops in the wintertime. So fur farming has allowed them to maintain their communities, subsidize other parts of the community, like the fish industry, where the byproducts of the fish industry are going to feed the animals. So we fully integrated for the communities. We keep people in the rural areas. We can't all move to Hong Kong, unfortunately, or New York. And fur farming or the fur industry has allowed us to really maintain and develop rural communities in the 20 countries that produce fur.
Thank you very much, Charlie and Maxime. It's clear to see the fur farming. It's a critical part of economic development in those regions. It is very important to have something to sustain the community there. So moving on, I would like to move another question to Charlie. I understand Charlie works very closely with the fashion brands in the whole world. So I'm sure there are questions from certain people that why they will put the question on why is natural and genuine furs from animals are still needed when we can secure or fabricate meat from plants and in lab. And in the same question, I guess you have chemical created fake fur. So why do we still need real fur? What is your intake here?
I like to say that real fur is a responsible luxury, and we are a natural fiber. And I think natural fibers have been used since the beginning of time, and they continue to show a balance between man and animals. Whereas in today's world, there are a lot of products made in laboratories that are primarily coming from petroleum-based products turned into plastic. And as we all know and recognize, that plastics are killing us. They're entering our food supply chain. They're actually entering into the wilderness, into the animals. And we as a population have to stop, analyze whether we could really call a fake fur made from petroleum or a polyester as an eco fur. And I think that argument the fur industry has won. If you notice that people using fake fur now no longer even call it eco fur, they've pivoted now to call it vegan fur. Because if you analyze their products and you do research on the warmth, on the longevity of the products, and what happens when a fake fur goes to a landfill, I think that it shows the responsibility of natural products. From the IFF's point of view, it's often quoted that a fur coat can last up to 20 years, and when it goes into a landfill, it biodegrades the same speed as a leaf. Whereas if you take something made from polyester, we don't know if it'll ever biodegrade in the landfills. As well, fur is a craft, and we're sustaining the craftsmanship of making a fur coat. And most of the fake furs today, or fake leathers, are made in countries with lower economic standards. So it's less benefit to the local communities. So I think from an environmental standpoint, natural products, natural fibers is more in line with our sustainable goals developed by the United Nations. So even though we have a battle on our hands to get this message out. I think the science is on our side, and natural products, natural fibers make for a better planet.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I would like to also understand the viewpoint from Maxim. Understand fur has a long tradition in Russia. It is part of the Russian culture. So how is the Russian, especially the young people, reacting to this question regarding natural and fake furs, and also how they see the future of fur?
Well, no, of course, just quickly about the natural and fake. I totally agree with what Charlie has said. Today we cannot clearly say that artificial materials are not harmful to humans, but for sure they are harmful for nature and environment. Fur is a unique material with unique properties, and existing so-called artificial plastic fake furs are not effective in harsh climates, which is confirmed both by scientific research and experience of wearing furs. Because in Russia, over 60% of the territory is under the harsh climate conditions. And we see that we still have a demand for real furs, not only because the tradition and culture, but also for the practical use. What about the young generation and how they see this? Well, it's quite, it's quite an interesting question, because today the case is that the most people from the generation Y or Z, they don't have enough income to buy such a material as a real fur, because actually the furs are the part of the luxury industry. Also, fur fashion is quite conservative and designed a little bit more for older group of people. There is very small range also of products for young people today. The model range. And we, as the fur industry, we promote the fur products now as something for the long-term use, which you can wear for a long time. And of course, young people, they frequently change their wardrobes. And of course, young people nowadays are more influenced by social media and the green agenda in the social media. And our position comparing to it is a little bit weak. And I think that maybe we're a little bit late with this generation. Because we still focus on some kind of glossy images on the fashion catwalks, shows, and while the young people might be a little bit indifferent to it. Perhaps maybe only so-called golden kids who have rich parents, they provide some interest to this kind of magazines or shows, but these are about maybe 5%, not more. I think that today, just to attract people to the fashion, to wearing fur, we need to create some kind of interesting lines and model ranges of fur type models aiming at young people. And this collection should be made using different combinations of fur and other textiles to make the costs more affordable to them, and more garments for other seasons, not like for winter, but for spring and autumn time where it's not so cold. And of course, to promote our products through the social media and communicate with the young people. And what I think that today, the fur industry just stepped into these social media communications, and we try to establish the good contacts with bloggers, and I think that we find some points of mutual understanding.
Thank you, Maxim. As a fur manufacturer myself, of course, we also have a responsibility in attracting the young people into using fur. So we also work closely with our partners in the auction company in campaigns to promote using fur in various contexts. So in that direction, I would like to ask Charlie, how do you see, how do you think the opportunity and how we should promote fur more targeted to the younger audience? What do you see in terms of opportunity and what we should do?
Well, we've been working with several universities around the world recently, particularly focusing on Generation Z. I think the millennials have is not a generation that became fur friendly, but I have good news to report that our research has showed that Generation Z is making their own opinion, and it's a new generation. And as they become consumers, I think they will open the opportunity for fur. What our research has found is that they want transparency in their supply chain. So the next generation, the way we have to reach them is to be able to provide them traceability from the farm to the retail. Just like it's very trendy now, farm to table in a restaurant, we need to continue to be able to do that in the first supply chain. We also have to communicate differently because right now our industry is in a communications battle for our survival. And as much of a fan as I am of fashion magazines and television, people today or the Generation Z, they communicate on their mobile devices. So, my generation, we use Facebook. Facebook is not used by Generation Z, and our focus on Facebook has to change. We have to be on Instagram. We have to be on TikTok. We have to be able to communicate where the next generation of consumers are. I think that there's also a great opportunity for Generation Z in upcycling of fur. I think that this generation is very concerned about the end of life of a product, and they rummage through their parents' and their grandparents' closets, and they have this great passion of wearing something vintage. And this has really encouraged the fur industry to go into the upcycling model, or you see this generation wearing an outdated coat, but wearing it proudly because it's keeping them warm, obviously in cold weather climates. It is a responsible luxury. This coat could be 10, 20, 30 years old, and they really feel they're making a social commitment of not using a plastic or fake fur by using a family heirloom for fur. So I think that we have a great opportunity here now to reach this next generation. We just have to change how we communicate with them. I do think that runways are an important tool for us, but this generation is very much influenced by celebrities and athletes. So we're working very hard from our point of view of Saga to get fur on certainly influencers on social media, but on movie stars, music stars, and athletes around the world. And I think that sort of endorsement from those high-profile celebrities has really helped our business and our marketing in the future.
So thank you very much, Charlie. I think it's a very interesting sharing. And as a fur manufacturer, I also can share with you that we do get tailoring requests every year. And the sentimental reason, it's something that is very important for the young generation to be able to use the garments passed down from the generations means something for them. And I would like to move on to the next questions. I understand the saga furs and the fur trade in general is also leading the development in fighting the pandemic. In particular, Finland has developed vaccines for mink. Can you explain a bit more about this, Charlie?
Yeah, I think, after the disaster and the bad press from Denmark about culling the mink, I think several places in the world have invested in vaccines for the mink. In North America, the majority of the mink in the US have already been vaccinated. They are starting to vaccinate the mink in Canada. And now we're happy to announce that there is enough vaccine for the breeder mink in Finland. And I think that vaccine, once it becomes commercialized, will be able to spread throughout Europe and hopefully Russia and Asia. So I think if we were able to vaccinate the mink and prove that there is no spread from animal to human, I think that a lot of this negative press and attempts by government agencies to hurt our industry, close our industry, will go away. We have the science. We were the first animal group to vaccinate our product. So yes, did the mink catch COVID? Yes. But did we react quickly, promptly, and scientifically? Yes. Our defense of our animals and of our mink in particular is based upon science. And certainly during this time of pandemic, vaccinating the mink was a game changer for us.
Certainly. So, Maxim, do you have similar initiatives in Russia?
Yes, sure. We have developed our Russian vaccine last year. It was introduced in April, but it is a universal vaccine for all kinds of animals, and it is now it's not used in the fur farming actually because we have a constant checks on all our fur farms, and we didn't have any cases of COVID, so the vaccination is not mandatory. But we have the vaccine, and it's now widely used in veterinarian clinics for people who want to vaccinate their pets, cats and dogs. And it's great that we have the opportunity of having our own vaccine and have other options of vaccinations, which United States and Finland introduces, which is really, I think, it's very helpful for the fur farming.
Thank you, Maxim. So I would like, we can see the fur industry is ready to handle the virus situation, and we are already doing our great contribution in this area. So I would like to move on to the next question from the audience, a question for Charlie. We understand a big part of feed for fur animals are for meat farming waste and fishing waste. What type of waste does the fur farming uses? And do you foresee the waste will now go to the landfill if there are no more fur farming?
I think an excellent question, and a lot of the animals are fed with byproducts not fit for human consumption. So when we talk about Scandinavian Nordic countries, we're talking about fish that not fit for human consumption. We're talking about the heads, the gills, and the insides that are then mixed with a cereal to give a very high protein diet to fur animals. In other places where there is equal access to animal products from pigs and cows, those are also used. So the fur industry does subsidize both the meat industry and the fishing industry with our purchase and taking away from these products that, if not for the mink or the farming industry, would go into landfills. Again, going back to my earlier comment, that nothing is going into a landfill here. As Maxim has said, even the manure is being turned into fertilizers and biofuels. The biofuels are then sold back to the farmers to run their feed trucks and even their trucks and their automobiles. So, I think circular economy with the food and with the manure and the farm waste really makes this a very exceptionally sustainable industry and really a leader in animal welfare standards.
Sure. Would Maxim also like to share the practices in Russia?
Well, actually, I just don't know what to add to what Charlie said to Charlie, because he covered completely everything. Of course, there's the similar situation with feed happening in Russia as well, because our farms, we also use the byproducts and like waste offals of the meat industry and the fish industry to feed animals, and I think all types of these offals are used. Just not only like in insides, but also the real good meat quality, depending on the animal diet, and but anyway, it fits into the circular economy situation with the farming.
Certainly. So I understand the practices are similar across Finland and also across the whole fur industry. From a fur manufacturer point of view, we also try to reduce the number of waste. We will consider carbon footprints. We will also consider the types of chemicals that we use in order to create a safe and reliable product for the whole world. So a final question to Charlie also. We would like to understand the life cycle analysis is an important part of sustainability. Has Saga done anything in terms of life cycle analysis and the whole production cycle analysis? Charlie.
I think both the Fur Breeders Association in Finland, Saga, and the IFF have invested heavily in research on life cycle analysis. I think it's one of our strong talking points and really something to be proud of in our industry. That at the end of the use of a coat, a coat that can be repaired, could be remodeled, it could be resold. When it does go to a landfill, it does biodegrade. It's a natural product. So I think knowing where and how the product, ends is important, is how the product is produced. I mean, we're a very responsible industry. Fur farming has, proudly used this sustainable farming methods for 100 years. We're just now coming up with the terms like, circular economy, but the farmers have been doing this as a natural process. I think manufacturers have very much improved their sustainable manufacturing. I mean, we as an industry have always kept the scraps and sewed them into plates for second-tier pieces. That's even before we knew that we were participating in circular economy and sustainable messages. So I think the industry has a communications issue on how to explain these practices that are really standard practices within our industry, both on the farming side and certainly on the manufacturing side as well.
So yeah, thank you very much, Charlie. Would Maxime like to add in terms of, I understand wild fur, it's captured from the wild, but it's also produced in a sustainable way. So how does the fur industry in Russia measure this, and how do they make sure it is sustainable in the long run?
Well, thank you. First, I would just like to say that Charlie covered the very good points of the sustainability and the use of furs in in this recycle economy. And now, with the trend of upcycling is real great in Russia. And talking about the wildlife and the sustainability of wildlife capturing is that first of all the wild fur trapping is fully controlled by the government. It is also embedded in the Russian traceability system called Mercury, where you can trace the movement of skin from the hunter to the auction. So it's the way is fully transparent. And what is more important here is that the government supports the restoration of the population, for example, of sables, because of organizing some kind of a natural reserves where sables can repopulate. And of course, government contributes a lot to the wildlife management, just to maintain the optimal levels of the population. We did the monitoring of sables 2 years ago, and it showed the good results that the current level of fur harvesting does not harm any the population levels of sables. There are a lot of territories in Russia where sable repopulate, and so I think this kind of monitoring of governmental support, it also makes it a great contribution into the sustainability development of the wild fur capturing.
So thank you very much, Maxime. I would like to say a few words before I conclude the session. And in terms of fur farms are very sustainable and are well monitored. And we can see that fur is definitely part of the solution to the future of our mankind. So I would like to conclude by thanking Mr. Maxime Chipenoy, who is the co-chief executive officer of the IFF Eurasia region, and also the chief manager of the Russian Fur Union. And also Mr. Charlie Walsh, who is from Saga Furs, is the business manager, fashion brands and trade, general manager, and general manager of Saga Furs North America. So thank you very much, Maxime and Charlie, for today's session. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
For the third and final panel discussion, I would like to introduce our moderator, Director of the Hong Kong Fur Federation, Mr. Anthony Ash, and our three speakers, President of Pacific Balance Marine Management, Mr. Tom Seward, Sales Representative of Runo Fur, Mr. Yue Hao, and finally, Program Manager of Canadian Seal Products, Ms. Romy Vaugeois.
Good morning, and welcome to our third panel discussion, Sustainably Blue, hosted by myself, Anthony Ash, of the Hong Kong Fur Federation. And in this forum, we shall be focusing on sustainability below the ocean, and in particular covering why are seals and life below the water so important? How sustainable are they? And how intrinsically linked are they between humans, taking a look at the relationship especially with the indigenous peoples, and livelihoods in the economy. And joining me to help find the answers to these issues are Romy Vaugeois, Program Manager at Seals and Sealing Network in Montreal, Tom Seward, President of Pacific Balance Marine Management, speaking to us from Washington, USA, and Yue Hao, Sales Manager at Runo Fur in Haining, China. Very warm welcome to you all. And to any of the viewers, if you have any questions you would like me to put to our panelists, please just message them in and I shall be happy to do so. Romy, if I can please start with you. You've been involved with the seals industry since 2015. Can you let our audience know a little bit about yourself and why you think seals and life below the water is so important?
Yes, for sure. Hi, everyone. Well, basically, my role at Seals and Sealing Network is to help Canadian companies to promote seal products like oil, meat, and fur. And before being involved in the seal industry, I actually lived in Beijing, China for 5 years. And it's when I got back in 2014 that I started to be involved in this industry. I launched my own business, and I was selling seal meat and seal oil for human and for pets. And here I am today promoting all seal products, including seal fur. So Anthony asked why our seal and life below water is important. One reason why this is so important for Canada is because Canada is has the largest ocean nation and the longest coastline in the entire world. So water is really important for us. And it creates many jobs. About 300,000 people work related to the ocean economy in Canada. And this represents about $32 billion each year. And the marine biodiversity of Canada ocean provides many benefits, including economic benefits from the East Coast to the North Coast to the West Coast. So it's important from all sides of Canada. And the seals, with their skin, their pelt, their oil, and their meat, offer valuable economic, health, nutritional, and cultural benefits. And hunting seals, it won't leave any adverse impact on the seal populations.
How sustainable do you... Sorry.
Go ahead.
Please. No, please.
I'm done.
So how sustainable do you feel the seals are overall? And what is their relationship with the local economy, with other life below water? Can you let us know your thoughts on this?
Yes, well, out of 33 seal species found in the world, we have 6 seal species in Canada, and none of them are endangered. And this is something that people, when they think about seal, they think that they're endangered, but it's the total opposite. They're overpopulated, we can say. In Canada, we have about over 10 million seals in our water, and this is the largest number ever observed by the Department of Fisheries and Ocean. And the most important seal species is called harp seal, and this is usually the fur that you're going to see on the market with some like silvery gray with some black spot. And their population is about 7.6 million. And since 1994, it grew 60%. So the population is growing every year at an almost exponentially. And it's sustainable because on the quota that we have in Canada, the quota, the total allowable catch, it's studied by our government. And right now we only harvest 0.5% of the total population. So there's really room to grow this industry. So that's why we say it's really sustainable.
And what uses are there for the seal? Obviously, seals are intrinsically linked with the fur trade. But then what other uses are there besides the fur?
Well, the omega-3, I feel, is one of the most important market for seal. And I bought some example here, the seal capsules, but we also have seal omega-3s for pets, which are more and more popular in Canada. So the oil is good for your health, it's good for your heart. And we also have the seal meat, which is considered a Canadian superfood because it's so nutritious, and it's good for many different health benefits, such as increasing energy. It boosts your immune system. Very good time to eat seal meat right now with Omicron going on. And of course, there's a seal fur, which is now used by several designers in Canada, not only to create clothing, but also fashion accessories and even home decor and stuff like that.
And of course, the capsules, the purchase of the capsules, the omega-3, they can be very expensive in retail shops.
Well, this is the only omega-3 that comes from Canada, and harp seal have different benefits compared to fish because it's a mammal. So, and it's not easy to go harvest. So, yes, they're not the cheapest omega-3, but they're good quality, and you'll see it's really easy to digest and so on. So they have many benefits.
Thank you very much, Romy. And I'd like to come to you now, Yue, if I may. You retail the seals you sell the seals in China. What can you add to what Romy's just explained to us about their value and how the animals are used?
First of all, I would like to start by a self-introduction, if I may. Some people may know us, most people know, and some people may wiggling and wondering who we are. So, good morning, fur dealers, manufacturers, agents, old and new friends, and folks. Is pleased of seeing you again, and happy year of Tiger, 新年快乐. Thank you, the organizer, Thomas, Eric, Canadian General Council of Hong Kong, Romy, Anthony, of making this event possible. My name is Hao, the agent of self-dealing with seal pelts in China. And for people who is wondering and wiggling about who we are, I'll start to elaborate into more details. About seal fur, with our effort and cooperation with the designers, industry players in the past 7 years, the sales of seal pelts in Greater China has been dramatically increased, more than 12 times of annual sales. Final product contained with seal pelts has been sold in commercial plaza, shopping malls nationwide, including 12 Haining Leather City Corporation, Yansha Youyi shopping mall in Beijing, and further export to Hong Kong, Korea, and Japan market. I would also like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of our designers, partners, and also to apologize to all of the past customers about the lackness of supply in 2020 due to the hysteria of the COVID and the impact of the harvest and destruction of the supply chain. However, the seal pile design process has not been affected. We have been continuously investment in innovation, in further processing, in dyeing, new color development, and concept design to ensure our coming delivery and to ensure we offered the best raw material to our clients. To the garment designers, brands in China, Korea, and Eastern Asia. Once again, thank you, the organizer, of making the event possible. And please feel free to reach out to us to work and to play together with us with this raw material. And I can ensure you will not be regret with the choice you made today. And I assure you, this will be your gain and your success in business. Well, back to your question regards the advantage of the silver. So I would like to elaborate into 3 aspects. First, its appearance, then function, and next would be biodegradable. The appearance from the fashion aspect, the appearance of the seal piles, it's an ideal material to make the combination between mink, leather, and other fabrics. The seal part will be able to provide a better reflection than other materials. It's going to be more attractive, elegant as a whole picture when customer wear it, put it on. The uniqueness, as every seal has its own uniqueness in pattern. The versatile, seal skin takes dye well. Not just about the fur side, will also be possible to make the patterns on the leather side, which is more production cost effective. And regards the function, which is second aspect, the designers and the brands who is focusing on outdoor creation and production for doing down coats or outdoor activities. The product's incredibly warm, used for thousands of years to protect Canadian Northwest residents of the most extreme winter condition. It is wind and water resistant, and is extremely durable for outdoor activities. It's lightweighted as well, because there's no underfur. It's light and less bulky. For the additional feature about the biodegradable, while we're shopping on Amazon and other e-commerce platforms nowadays, with a growing number of products start using biodegradable package, which customers are willing to pay for their peace of mind. Well, the seal pouch itself biodegradable. It's eco-friendly. It's non-renewable and environmentally toxic clothing made of fur. Seal products are beneficial to the planet because they naturally decompose and help to avoid to build the landfill. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Thank you for that very clear introduction, Yue, and explanation. What type of garments are particularly popular in China using the seals? How are they used mainly?
Thank you for the question. At the beginning of 2015, we primarily make the combination between seal pals and the mink. And we make different patterns like a heart or other patterns inside of the garment. It's a cost efficiency when the mink prices are high. So the customer are willing to create a big pattern of using seal instead to save some of their cost on mink. But it's attractive. And in the recent years, we got succeed mostly with cashmere and wool by making large seal pelts as a pocket and accessories on top of the cashmere. So basically, those are the two designs which achieved ourselves in the past decade. For the current designs, I'm not be able to elaborate more due to the confidentiality. But however, I'm willing to share with industry players if in interest with our newest pattern, color, and the processing technique.
Thank you, Yiwei. Thank you very much. But so far we have been talking about the sustainability of seals, and we've been talking about them as a biodegradable item for garments, and we've been talking about uses, other uses as well, as Rome has kindly explained. Tom Seawood, if I can please come to you. Can you please introduce yourself to our viewers and give a little bit of a background of your relationship with the seals and the indigenous peoples of Northern America and Canada?
Ela Kasla, greetings. My name is Thomas Seawood. I'm the president of Pacific Balance Marine Management here in British Columbia, West Coast, Canada. And I'm Kwakwaka'wakw First Nations from northeastern Vancouver Island. And out of respect from our tribe, I wear a cedar bark headpiece with the white ermine skin like a weasel, the abalone shell, grizzly claw necklace with a Chinese glass bead from 200 years ago, and a button image of one of my family's crests. And it's just what our chiefs expect of us when we speak to people in gatherings like this. But Pacific Balance Marine Management, me being a president for almost 4 years, I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid by any company or any government body. And what it's about is I'm a commercial fisherman for 45 years of my life, and I'm 57 here next week. And I saw no seals when I was young. And all of a sudden in the 1972, the government of Canada said, there's no seals, so we're going to put a ban on the west coast of Vancouver Island that no one can sell them, including you Indians. And so no one cared. But in the 1980s, we saw seals numbers starting to return. And now we have on the coast of Canada, West Coast in British Columbia, and even in Washington State down to California and Oregon included, the eradication of our salmon and other finfish, equivalent, if not greater than the demise of the great extermination of the great buffalo herds across our Great Plains. And we know from North American history that the reason why the buffalo were killed was to starve the Indians. And that's what we're feeling now here in British Columbia, Canada. There are so many seals and sea lions eating our salmon, our steelhead trout, our big, great prehistoric sturgeons in our rivers, our herring, which feed everything because they're at the bottom of the food chain. Well, everything's starting to disappear from the overpopulation of seals and sea lions. But our federal government won't allow us Indians to harvest them and sell them. They won't allow the non-Indians to sell them and remove them because, God forbid, it would be political suicide that a government agent or person signed a pen to a document that says humans can shoot seals and sea lions. But the Indians in West Coast Canada have always had the right under what we call food social ceremonial, 365 days a year, no size limits, no amount limits. We can harvest for food social ceremonial, as is my grizzly claw necklace. British Columbia, Canadians as a whole cannot shoot grizzly bears in British Columbia, but I can because I'm an Indian. And that's the power that I'm going to get to in a bit. But let's go back. Let's go back to when I met with Madam Consul General Tong Shou Ling at the Chinese consulate in Vancouver a couple of weeks prior to the COVID epidemic. And I told her, can you imagine what it was like in 1421? Because an author by the name of Gavin Menzies wrote a book from 2003 entitled 1421, The Year China Discovered America. That's huge because my Kwakwaka'wakw and other coastal tribes speak about these people coming from the west in hundreds of ships, canoes. They called them Kwikwikwinala, thunderbirds, because when they put their sails up, there was a boom of the wind catching the sails. And that's why we called the sailing ships Kwikwikwinala. But we spoke of these people who came, and they would leave with many furs and jade and other things, and they would never come back again. But then the other people came in 1778. So some 357 years, the Chinese discovered the west coast of the Americas well before the Europeans. Now, if we look at it and we look at the power of the Indians in Canada, we have Supreme Court decisions that say we can harvest for food, social, ceremonial, and for economic development and cultural development. We have laws in the Supreme Court of Canada that say our oral history is taken as law in those courtrooms. And that gives us the power now to look to the Chinese, the big market that is in Asia. And we look at us Indians here in the west coast of Canada. The indigenous Inuit up in the Arctic coast, they can harvest seals for food. Their byproduct is the hides, which they're allowed to sell. In the east coast of Canada, through the Maritimes, they can harvest seals, Indian and non-Indian, and they can sell it. But here in the west coast of Canada, just like the buffalo and the Indians being starved, we are not allowed to sell our seals and sea lions. And we have two species of sea lions. We have over 110 to 120,000 seals throughout British Columbia. And I'm working with our federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans, our governing federal body, to give us license. And I'm saying your rules say that only 20% no more of a fish species or a resource can be harvested. I'm saying let us Indians, 107 tribes in British Columbia, harvest 100 each for the first year so we can sell them and we can open up that Asian market. And hopefully we're going to have this in the coming months. Been working 4 years. We're almost there. And when you speak about what does the seals have to do with the life underwater? If we look at the Indian legends, they say that the creator created the world and everything in it except for human beings. Thousands of years later, he came back to where my people come from, and he saw that without human beings, the animal kingdom was out of harmony and balance. And in turn, there was no salmon or herring or oologans or smelt or halibut or cod because they were being eaten by too many seals and sea lions and bears and other animals. So he made his brother transform animals into human beings. And that's where we Kwakwaka'wakw come from. And our role since the dawn of creation as humans has been to harvest for our children for food, social, ceremonial purposes and keep that animal kingdom in harmony. And then the colonialized laws come in and they tell us Indians that we can't harvest or sell anymore. We can only use it for our own use. Well, like we hear from Japan with the herring roe, the younger generations are growing older. They want the Kentucky Fried Chicken, the McDonald's. They don't want the traditional Kuzinoko herring roe. So the markets are falling. In China, we hear people saying that the traditional ways are being pushed aside for the modern ways of cellophane, plastic wrapped, mass-produced foods. And the traditional foods are sort of being pushed aside. And that's what's happened here in British Columbia. Most of us Indians rely upon plastic wrapped, factory produced foods. Just a few of us harvest seals and sea lions for food nowadays. And in turn, that animal kingdom balance is not coming online. So we must reach out to the Chinese, as I did with Madam Consul General that time, and say, let's not let these colonial-based Canadian laws hold us back. Let's step forward in partnership, the Chinese and the indigenous people of West Coast Canada and other coasts of Canada, and throughout with all the furs that the indigenous people are harvesting. And you have to remember there's 3 indigenous tribes of Canada, the Inuit from the north, the First Nations throughout from coast to coast, and the Métis now. And we must work together so that we can say, well, we have oral history, both from China and from Canada, and we have physical archaeological evidence and museum evidence that shows that the Chinese and West Coast Canadian Indian trade route was well established hundreds of years before European contact. And now we're going to use that to sit down with the Chinese business people and say, yes, we understand you want seal hides and sea lion and other furs of Canada. Well, the East Coast of Canada and the Inuit need your help too, as we in the West Coast. We need you to look at Vancouver, British Columbia. It is a stone's throw across the water to the Asian markets of China and others. Yet we have no Vancouver fur auction. We have no tanneries in Vancouver. They are gone. But the east coast of Canada has a vast seal population and a vast quota of over 200,000 animals that they only harvest a small portion of because they say there's no markets. Well, if we work together and we Indians come with government grants, we can get up to $200 million forgivable by the government as a grant to start a business. And that's where the Chinese come in and say, we're willing to take 49% so that the company qualifies because it's 51% indigenous owned. And let's go for those big, vast government grants from many different avenues, and even from the philanthropists, the environmentalists, and build those tanneries and build those garment producing factories and make Vancouver the Milan of the world of seal fashion and other furs. And then in turn, the East Coast now knows that this big thing called the continent of North America and the country of Canada that is in the way of them and the East Coast with their seal market to Asia has now got a springboard of opportunity for all Canadian, Indigenous Canadian from the three tribes, and the Chinese business people. Because I know in studying this fur industry, it is something we need to do. The colonial-based Hudson's Bay way of looking at the fur industry of Canada is dead. It is over, and to us Indians, it will never happen again. We will never be controlled by colonial Hudson's Bay factors again, suppressing us. Now it's time for us to reach out to the Chinese and say, let's work together in partnership. And let's make the Canadian fur industry explode like it used to be for hundreds of years. And that's what built Canada from sea, coast to coast to coast, and everything in between. And I know we can do it because we Indigenous have everything you need. We have the rights, we have the title, we have the government grants, and we are more Canadian than Canadian. We are unstoppable. And when we want to start a business, hell or high water, we say in Canada, don't get in my way, my head down and my horns are sharp, and pitter patter, we're going to get at her and we're going to achieve the goal. And let's make Vancouver and British Columbia and Canada as a whole a massive fur industry for the world. And we need the Chinese help. I thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, on behalf of the viewers. That was a fascinating, inspiring insight, and really, really appreciate you taking the time. Do you think that when people generally look at the seals trade and other wild furs in Canada, do you think they necessarily realize the long relationship it has with the Indigenous peoples and how important these industries are still to the Indigenous peoples in North America and Canada?
No, it's the same way as the Canadians and the North Americans and the world history looks at the Chinese who helped build our railways of Canada and helped build our salmon canneries of coastal British Columbia. They don't think of them. They don't speak of them. They don't acknowledge them. And that's the way we Indians are to the fur industry. And that's the change I'm making. And I'm saying, no, they call us First Nation for a reason. We were here first and we're going to be here till the end of time. And the colonial way and empire-driven economies and industry, the Industrial Revolution of North America took place. But now they've sort of pushed the Asian business people in the canneries and the building of the railways history aside, as they're doing with us Indigenous people with furs. And that's why I say, let's Indigenous people of Canada, the three tribes, and the Chinese get together and let's resolve what we know is wrong and let's take over the fur industry.
Well, thank you very much again for that explanation, Tom. I'd like to ask, I mean, we have 15 minutes left in our discussion. I'd like to ask you one quick question that I've just received from a viewer, if I may, and then I would like to go to Romy. Tom, how closely, I mean, you mentioned the Canadian government regulations as opposed when it comes to hunting seals and numbers. How closely do they regulate the hunting, and what measures are they to prevent overhunting from the Canadian government?
Right now, because of the demise of our salmon runs, and I'm an unemployed commercial salmon and herring fisherman right now, they downsized our commercial herring fishery by 50% for 2022, and I lost my position. So right now, there's a lot of people, if you look at Facebook group, Pacific Balance Marine Management, that's the one I moderate and I post. I had to initiate a call I had no choice. We were losing our salmon, sturgeon, and herring and everything else to be eaten to extinction. And I could share that if people email me. I can share you that video we produced called Eaten to Extinction. But what it was I knew we weren't going to have any fisheries left. My Ginganan and my children would not be able to fish as I did in the saltwater and rivers for salmon. So I chose to initiate a harvest call and tell my native people, I have the non-Indians behind me. I reached out at this GoFundMe campaign for money to be donated to us because we're volunteers and no one's paying attention to us in the government, that we're being starved because our salmon and fish are being removed. So the non-Indians are giving me money so that we can buy Visa and MasterCard gift cards and send them to the Indian harvesters throughout British Columbia for bullets and gas. Gasoline right now in British Columbia is $8 a gallon. Down here in Washington State, it's under $4. So it's double the price in British Columbia. And a lot of our Indian people in our coastal communities are on welfare. They're getting government subsistence because of COVID, because of no fishing, no logging. They got rid of the fish farms now because of the environmentalists. And don't get me involved on the environmentalists. We'll be here till midnight Canadian time. But anyway, I made a call and to save the salmon, herring, and other finfish. And it's working so well that I seen a sea lion rookery that used to have 60 animals, had one dead one covered in bird droppings all over it, and one other swimming in the water. And I was told by the Indians, we're removing them, Tom. We're doing what you say. And it's the same with seals, but most of our seals are in urbanized areas where we can't use guns. So they're staying there, reproducing and getting bigger and bigger and eating our fish to extinction. So how do we get that balance? Well, one way is I devised a trap we could use underwater. And so we can harvest in those urbanized areas with houses and everything. But what we really need is the license to be able to harvest them. And that's where, if we get letters of intent from Chinese fur manufacturers, and just an idea, I know as a boat salesman a number of years ago that you guys reproduce speedboats right up to great yachts and send them across the seas to the world markets. Well, seal fur is semi-water repellent. So when you build a speedboat for fishing or outdoor use and it doesn't have a roof or a yacht with outdoor seating, if you upholster it with seal hide and you go out there when it's drizzly or damp or morning dew, you just wipe it off and sit down and your backside pants don't get wet. So there's a huge market that the Chinese can be taking shipping containers of frozen Canadian seal furs from the East Coast, the North Coast, and the West Coast, because we have 6 different variations of seal species. But just recently, the hides I sent in to get tanned have been looked at from West Coast, British Columbia, and have been labeled as the Cadillac of the furs of seals in Canada, because British Columbia seals go from white, blotchy white, tans, blondes, cinnamons, right to blacks and grays and circles and you name it. So there's a vast market, and that's where this whole conference is about. What do we do next? I'm here. I got an email. I got a phone number. You can put me on a plane and bring me to China as well, but let's get this fur industry going with seals and other fur products in Canada.
Thank you so much again, Tom. We've obviously been, the topic of this forum is sustainability and how humans, animals, and life below the water is symbiotically, intrinsically linked. Romy, Tom mentioned there's some solutions as to how to continue this sustainability and to ensure that the industry and the animals continue to thrive. What further thoughts do you have as to Tom's suggestions?
I just like to add to what Tom said, because he has the indigenous perspective, and your question was how do we make sure that we don't over catch seals. The situation is a bit different for commercial harvest on the East Coast. And I just want to specify that sealing is one of the most scrutinized hunt in the whole world. So it's really well verified by the Canadian government. And the Department of Fisheries and Ocean issued some license to commercial fishermen after they had some trainings, after they had years of training. And there's also other organizations involved, like Canadian Food Inspection Agency, that make sure that the food products are safe and so on. So there's there's multiple organization involved, and all the harvesters need to be really well trained. And there's also scientists checking every 4 years, reassessing the population, making sure that they're still healthy, considering like the ice, the global warming, the human harvest, and so on. So, yeah. But
thank you, Romy.
do you want to repeat your question? I just wanted to add this additional information.
Well, I mean, we have around just under 10 minutes left of the forum, so I think we should sum up how we conclude this issue and what further thoughts we have to improve the sustainability. So let's, if I can ask you that for a couple of minutes, and then I'll ask each of you to sign off before we finally go off air. So can I start with you, Romy?
For sure. Well, like I said, we have over 10 million seals in the ocean, and seals eat a lot of fish. They eat about 3 tons per seal per year. So that means that it's about 53 times what the whole Atlantic Canadian fisheries fleet is harvesting. So if you want to make something sustainable, eat seal, wear seal, take your seal oil supplements, and that's going to help us to balance our marine ecosystem and just rebalance what the imbalance that have been created, because seals don't really have enemies except humans. There's a little bit of sharks in our water, but yeah, consuming seal will really help us to rebalance the marine ecosystem.
Thank you. Tom, I know you wanted to make a point there. I'll get you back in a minute, but for now, I'd just like to ask Yue quickly. Tom mentioned the relationship with the indigenous peoples and the new potential commercial links with the Chinese. How important do you feel they are, and how do you feel these will develop in future?
To be clarified, for the traditional of the harvest, it may have a challenge of actually doing the commercial trade. But however, to have the education advocate regards indigenous culture, Aboriginal traditional harvest, it may easier for us to do our advertisement, to promote to general customers. And meanwhile, it is an interesting topic to design, follow that scenario, to come with some interesting concept designs with a series of garments and accessories, brand and named under indigenous and Aboriginal. It's going to be a market, and it's going to be interesting.
Thank you, Yue. We're approaching the last 5 minutes, so I'd like to bring Tom in now, and then I'll go to each of you to sign off. And if you could please provide your contact email addresses in case any of the viewers would like to reach out and ask questions, please feel free to do so. Tom, you wanted to make a point just there. Please go ahead.
Sustainability. Number one, Canada, my grandfather was one of the visionaries that helped put the 250-mile sea limits on our coast throughout Canada and the world, signed in Geneva, Switzerland. He was the signatory for Canada. But he taught me one thing when he was asked the same question back in the late 60s and early 70s leading up to that. We Indians have always harvested, and we know it's all about balance. But backing that up, we Indians will never exterminate to extinction. But backing that up, Canada's 3 coasts and the lakes and rivers throughout Canada are some of the best managed by our Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans and our provincial and territorial wildlife environmental agencies. So it'll always be sustainable. Canada has matured enough to ensure that will happen. And sustainability and how we're all tied in. You know, indigenous people have been eating those seal oils, and this is Waspu, an indigenous brand from the East Coast. But seal oil, you know, and we're working with a company that's telling us that this fetus and juvenile seal pup brains have something in there that stops Alzheimer's and dementia in its tracks, and we'll be harvesting more this pupping season. But that's where it's all about. It's so unknown, and we have to get involved with it and not be afraid against the naysayers and environmentalists. And just so people know, I helped win the 2010 Winter Olympics for the Canadians here in British Columbia when I was in Aboriginal Tourism BC. Our team helped with that win, and we helped incorporate the Indian cultural component into the 2010 Winter Olympics. And those medals in China with the native design from 2010, that's my cousin's design. She helped with that. So I've been around the block a bit. So if you want to reach out to me, best way is go to Facebook, Pacific Balance Marine Management. My email's in every post, tom.sewid@gmail.com, tom.sewid@gmail.com. I thank you all very much. And for all of you watching in my traditional language, Aquapala, halakulisla. Go in peace.
Thank you, Tom. Very much appreciated. I'm sure all the viewers would like to pass similar sentiments to you, as well as their particular thanks for your very detailed and inspiring insights into the industry. Romy, how can we, I'll go to you to close as well, please. Please advise your thoughts, summarizing the issue with the discussion that we've had. And again, your thoughts on how we can do better, what future you see for the industry and for the continued sustainability.
Well, if I can summarize, seal products are good for your health. They're soft, they're good for you, but they're also good for the environment. And using seal fur won't leave any impact on the environment and the seal population. So feel free to buy it, and Iwei is the right person to contact for that. But if you need more information, or if you're interested in seal meat and seal oil and seal fur products, you can find us at canadiansealproducts.com. That's pretty easy to remember. And my email is info@canadiansealproducts.com. So if you type this on Google, you should find us easily.
Thank you, Romy. It's a pleasure chatting with you this morning. I hope it's not too late for you over in Montreal. Yue, if I come back to you, how do you feel about the issue? Please sum up, and also provide your contact. How can viewers get hold of you if they have any questions at all?
I'm the sales. So the issue about us, it's awareness. In the past of 7 years, we have done approximately 400 designs with those dedicated, most smart designers I have ever been met. And in the next 2 months, we are going to launch our new color of the year to be better collaborate of this coming winter design. So for people who interest, please ask Hong Kong Fur Federation. They certainly have my contact information. And or come to Haining to visit us. I'll be greatly pleasure to introduce the designs we had in the past of 7 years and our coming concepts, so to make us to gain together.
Thank you very much, Yue. Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to join us from Haining, China. Well, it's been a fantastic 45 minutes of discussion. I'd like to sincerely thank all three panelists for taking part in this intriguing debate. Romy Vaugeois, Tom Sewid, and Yue Hao. Thank you very much, and I hope that we can all meet up once COVID restrictions have finally eased. I've really enjoyed the debate. I hope viewers have too. And thank you very, very much for following us. Thank you for following the debate. I hope you've enjoyed it. Goodbye.
Bye, thank you.
Wow, very interesting panel discussions. I have to take this opportunity to thank Consulate General of Canada in Hong Kong and the Hong Kong Fur Federation for co-hosting this event. I also have to thank the Honorary Mrs. Regina Yip for her inspiring keynote speech. And also a special thanks to the powerful panelists for their thought-provoking sharing, and also to the moderators for their animating panel discussions. But most important of all, I have to thank you, all the viewers. Without you, this summit would not have been the success it has. Lastly, let us remember that we are all in this together. We can all do our bit. We can join hands for sustainability, to leave a better world for our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you to all the panel speakers and moderators for your wonderful insight into today's topic. The discussion was very inspiring, and I'm sure everyone has learned a lot from today's seminar. Once again, I'd like to thank the Consulate General of Canada in Hong Kong for co-hosting this event with us. At the same time, I'd like to show our deepest appreciation to Her Honourable Mrs. Regina Ip and Consul General of Canada in Hong Kong, Ms. Rachel Bedlington, for joining us today as well. To our audience, thank you for joining us and participating in today's event. In the end, I'd like to remind everyone that the recording of this seminar can be found and seen in our virtual Hong Kong Fur Fair website. So if anybody wants to see it later on, you may visit our website. Goodbye and have a wonderful day.